Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel and another episode of Dump and Chase on this fine week of hockey that has definitely been very interesting through many trades of Tristan Jarry becoming an Oiler. Quinn Hughes is now in the Minnesota Wild. A couple of goalies carrying their franchises in certain respects in different ways, and as well as some other news in the world of hockey. And yes, we will get into all of this. But until we start that, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell. I want to hear about what all of you are doing, what all of you are thinking, and really just to keep building this great community here and keep providing some pretty good content. But let's stop talking about this intro and all this sappy stuff. Let's get right into the news. And starting off with probably one of the more hotter pieces of news, and I know what you're thinking. No, I'm not going to get into the trades just yet. But I'm going to get into a goalie that has taken this league by storm. Yes, a guy that was signed to the Florida Panthers was going to be an AHL goalie, maybe like a third string guy on the team, probably not going to play too many games to start. He was then put on waivers and claimed by the Carolina Hurricanes, a team who has had a lot of goalie problems. You know, Peter Kochetkov has been fine, but injured. And then we know Frederik Andersen, who's usually good, but of course, injured. The name Brandon Bussi ring a bell? Well, if it doesn't, then it will right now, because this guy has been on absolute fire and he has set a record. Yes, when you look at what he's been able to do so far, he has 11 wins on the season, 12 games played. Absolutely stunning for a guy in Brandon Bussi. A .911 save percentage, a .205 goals against average, and on fire. It's crazy how good of a pickup this has been, and probably up there for waiver wire pickup of the year. And it was one of the earliest ones in the season. So, I mean, big credit to the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, if you have followed Bussi's, you know that this isn't exactly crazy to think about with how good he's been. Now, I'm not saying it's the easiest thing in the world to go and dominate the NHL, but when we look at his numbers right here in the last couple of years at least, last year with the last couple of years with the Providence Bruins, a .913 and a .907 respectfully, in a decent amount of games, 30 plus for each season. In the one season, 41, and the other with 33. To a point where last year, I thought he was going to at least get called up for Boston with how bad things have been, with some injuries. And honestly, he deserved it with his numbers. I don't really think that's absolutely crazy to say for a guy in Brandon Bussi. Now, with this whole thing going into this season, I felt he should have at least been a backup. Now, that wasn't how it started, right? He was supposed to be a third string goaltender for the Florida Panthers, but now he finds himself at least in a spot where it's got me thinking he has to at least be the backup, solidified for the Carolina Hurricanes. And now it's got me thinking this guy should be starting a lot more games than what we've seen. Now, it's hard to say that when you have a guy like Frederik Andersen, who's been pretty solid throughout his NHL career and is very tenured in this league. You already have a younger goalie in Petr Kochetkov. This is not going to be a long-term plan. However, if he keeps playing like this, his NHL career might be only getting started. Yes, although he is 27 years old, goalies do take a little while to blossom and really be able to break into this league. Now, if he continues this, and with how the goalie market is, maybe at the end of this season, he finds himself with a pretty lucrative contract and gets himself there. Going into other stats, it comes to goals saved above expected at 8.7. And remember, this is in 11 games. To think about what he could do in a little bit more. Could be good, could be bad. We don't really know. But when it comes to consistency and what you need from goaltenders these days, I don't really think it's crazy to say that Brandon Bussi could be doing that on some form of level. You know, his injuries aren't bad and he can be consistent. That's all the Carolina Hurricanes need. And sometimes for other teams, that's all they need as well. So I don't really think it's crazy to say that, but this is a really cool story that I want to start off with because it's impressive, right? You don't get these type of waiver claims these days. Like the biggest waiver claims I can think of alongside Brandon Bussi, Troy Stecher to the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? No one was really expecting him to step into that top four and play extremely well with such big minutes. He was already a good player, don't get me wrong, but you know, being on waivers from the Edmonton Oilers, wow, very impressive. And just like Brandon Bussi, there's not many waiver claims that go well, in any year, right? They just be okay and average and do fine. But there are some that stick out, and Brandon Bussi has been one of those, so I wanted to shout him out first. He's been such a great story this season, so it's definitely worth it. But the biggest things that I know all of you are here to listen about is the one big trade that kind of went on, if you didn't know. Quinn Hughes, it was a little bit of a lot of prospects and a lot of maybe sadness, happiness for either side, I guess, depending if you're a Wild fan or a Canucks fan. But yes, Quinn Hughes, he goes to the Minnesota Wild in exchange for Marco Rossi, Zeev Buium, Liam Ohgren, and a first-round pick in 2026. So let's see how their first games went. Minnesota Wild being the Boston Bruins 6-2 at home in Luke Hughes. Oh my goodness. See, I'm getting too far ahead of myself in Quinn Hughes's debut for the Wild. Now, he did have a goal in this. He scored the fourth one, I believe, for the Minnesota Wild. Played pretty good and looked pretty electric. But in just Hughes fashion in the interview that he did, very straight-faced, very just, to business, to the point, as a captain would be and as a leader would be. Don't want to get too far into it. Very PR trained, but says, I guess, what you want to hear. He seemed like he enjoyed himself when he was announced to the crowd. It was absolutely crazy, absolutely electric, and just, you can feel it. You can feel that difference in Minnesota, something that 10 consecutive first-round exits will do to you, 22 years of not being in the conference final, and 0 Stanley Cup final appearances and cups, of course. So a really tough one for Minnesota all those times, but now you had a guy like Quinn Hughes who played, only a little bit of minutes, only almost 27 minutes in this game. He looked really good. I mean, very dynamic, very easy to bring that puck along into the neutral zone and the offensive zone. Just a good guy the transition was good for the Minnesota Wild. And you kind of had that with Brock Faber. Might have had that, honestly, in the future with a guy like Zeev Buium, but to have someone as seasoned as Quinn Hughes, who, as I mentioned in my other video, is arguably the 1 or 2 best defensemen in the NHL, he looked solid. He looked calm, he looked cool, he collected, poise. That's what you're looking for if you're a Quinn Hughes lover, just like Bill Guerin was making that trade when he was making meatballs and got that call that it was going to go through. So, Minnesota Wild fans should be excited. Why shouldn't they? You got Quinn Hughes. He looked great. He's going to change this franchise just like he did here. Now, again, it's not going to be a 6-2 win every game, and I don't think that's surprising when it comes to something like this. I don't think I'm going up to someone and saying, yeah, this is what it's going to be like every game. No, but this is what it should be like for the most part when it comes to Quinn Hughes' game, and maybe for the Minnesota Wild going forward. So I think that first game for him went pretty well. Again, it's going to be a little bit of a transition period. Just some good stuff from Quinn Hughes. But even on the other side for the Vancouver Canucks, they're also part of this, right? Some people might forget that. They had a 2-1 win as well. They had a win over the New Jersey Devils. Funny how that one works. Yeah, I think it went decently well. Zeev Buium, he logged a ton of minutes, also scored and got an assist in this one, played almost 20 minutes tonight. Now, when you look at something like this, it might be easy to get lost in these stats. His goal and his assist weren't exactly great. They weren't exactly smooth, but they don't ask you how, they ask you how many. And Zeev Buium had 2 points tonight. So that's 2 points in his Vancouver Canucks debut. Now, Liam Ohgren almost played 12 minutes tonight, was a -1, didn't get anything done there. And then you look at a guy like Marco Rossi, played 18 minutes, nothing crazy, but was a little bit gritty. He had his blocks, did his stuff, was 60% on the face-off dot. Can't be mad about that. Again, it's the first game. There's not too much to analyze, but an interesting game for Vancouver, considering that you get outshot 26-15 and still win. That's a shout-out to Thatcher Demko, who played really well. But I also like to point out for the New Jersey Devils, you still get a pretty decent game from your team. It's just not one that I guess you're hoping to put away and get out-goalied. So for the New Jersey Devils, maybe some things that they got to figure out down the road here. I was talking to someone who is a Devils fan. He said, yeah, they got to make a trade. I think you got to figure out what's right, what's wrong. Probably something to addition of that top 6. something that a lot of teams are trying to do, but maybe they need one more than others. But yeah, let me go over, just to get back to what we were trying to talk about here. This Quinn Hughes trade, very interesting. I don't think it's something that we should be looking into too far with, but yeah, first games for either side, not bad. Not bad. Again, we won't really be able to fully analyze this trade till about a couple of years down the road, but the overanalyzing that we've done over the past couple of days has been pretty extensive. So it's always fun to do that. But going from one big trade to a still decently big trade, just not, I guess, in the terms of getting a Quinn Hughes, is Tristan Jarry, who was traded to the Edmonton Oilers along with Samuel Poulin for a second-round pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins, Stuart Skinner and Brett Kulak. Yeah, I did like this one for Kyle Dubas and company, and if you saw my Instagram, you know that I gave them a higher grade. But we're here to talk about Tristan Jarry and how that one's going, and it's a 6th win over the Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday Night Hockey. Now, I really did think that the Toronto Maple Leafs played better, and I mean, if you're going to go off the deserve to win-o-meter, then yeah, they would agree with me too at 72%. But for me, Tristan Jarry kind of did what he needed to do in this game, and I mean, goals saved above expected of 1.12. Yeah, you're doing just above the bare minimum. But this was a carry job by the big boys of the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid, who looked absolutely great. 2 goals in this, Leon Draisaitl again, and even the weird one of Vasily Podkolzin. Yeah, he did have some help in this game. Again, we're overanalyzing in one game, which is why I just want to touch on it a bit rather than really get into the nitty-gritty here. But look, the guy played in his Pittsburgh Penguins mask. This has been a very quick transition for him. The biggest thing here is, one, is he going to be able to be consistent on this Edmonton Oilers team and provide that stability that they've just been so much looking for so many years and finally were able to pull the trigger on? And 2, how healthy is he going to be? Because, yeah, with Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, they were healthy. They were just inconsistent and sometimes terrible. But now you're into a spot where, yeah, you have one goalie in Calvin Pickard, who will likely start a little bit less games, or I guess you're hoping for that. And he'll be what he is, which is kind of the bare minimum, maybe a little bit less than that. And then there's Tristan Jarry, who for the most part in his career has looked pretty good, but recently has been hurt. Right? So you are doing a little bit of a balancing act. Now you do have Connor Ingram in the minors, who hasn't been great for Bakersfield, but you do have some NHL experience there. So again, something to fall on, but you don't want to have to go to that. That's not why they made this trade. They made this trade because Tristan Jarry has been pretty solid. He's looked good this year. Don't talk about his playoff experience because apparently no one wants to talk about that, even though it hasn't been good and it's very little. But yeah, again, one game, we're not going to overanalyze, but it's a 6-3 win. He did a little bit more than he needed to for this game. And it's against a pretty formidable foe in the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have been good lately. So I don't mind that at all for him. But again, we'll see how this one kind of goes, or how it goes down the road. But we'll move on to some bigger news and a couple of injuries on the docket for the NHL season, and some big ones. And we're going to start off with one in Logan Cooley, who is out at least 8 weeks with a lower body injury. If you missed that, yeah, it was not a good one. It was against Vancouver. He slid into the net with his leg crashing in. Just a tough one to kind of bear if you're a Utah Mammoth fan, because one, Logan Cooley has been so good this season. Like, I don't think we're realizing how good of a player he has been, or at least how much he's been able to change the dynamic of the Utah Mammoth. Because, yeah, I mean, when we look at Utah and how they've been able to do this season, this is a team who not only is struggling to keep into a playoff spot now, but doesn't really have that great of center depth, right? Like, you talk about, there's Logan Cooley, and then there's Barrett Hayton, and then you kind of get into the, I don't know, who else is down there, because there's no one else that's going to be able to step into that bottom 6. And Utah has great wingers. They're still waiting on those young centermen that they drafted, their most recent one in Dewane. He's not ready yet. So the one thing you have to be looking for if you're Utah is another center. But now with Logan Cooley out, you're kind of faced with that thought of, okay, our team is good, but it's not that good, right? And I think we can all agree with that. This is not a Stanley Cup contender. It's maybe a playoff contender. The reason why I said if they made it, I'd get frosted tips on my hair. Again, I hope they don't make it because of that. If they do, really cool. I'll rock that and be fine with it. But Logan Cooley is a massive part of this team. Him being out for 8 weeks, 2 months at minimum, could really hurt how far this team is going to be able to go, especially in a very close Central Division. Now, that just added a guy in, what's his name? Is it Quinn Hughes? That one that already has Cale Makar and Miro Heiskanen. Yeah, 2 good teams in the Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Stars that will likely be taking up those 1 and 2 spots in the Central. Now will probably be Minnesota. And then now you're also dealing with Winnipeg. Chicago's been good, right? And then those wild card spots, of course, in the other side of the West in the Pacific. So it's going to be really hard to compete right there. And I never really thought Utah was ready. Again, I thought this was going to be another stepping stone. And if they made it, that's great. I still like their team. But I just wasn't sold. And that was the biggest thing for me. And him being out and not being able to contribute for them, that's even worse. And I think that's really tough when you talk about him and how big of a piece he's been for them. Yeah, you got to keep that in mind. So going from one big injury to another kind of fluky, awkward one in Connor Bedard, who had to leave Saturday night's game. I'm pretty sure it was right at the end of either the second or the third period. But yeah, so he's on a face-off with Braden Shen, gets taken down, falls awkwardly, and it looks like it's his shoulder. Again, there's no signal of what it is right now. Chicago hasn't said anything yet. They just, he's injured. He didn't go on the road trip. It didn't look good. And there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. Now, for Connor Bedard, who's been on an absolute tear this season, right? You talk about he has 12 goals, 25 assists. He's leading Chicago in pretty much every metric. And, could be making Team Canada. So does this hurt it? I guess it depends on how long his shoulder keeps him out for. Like, this could be something where it's like, yeah, you're out for a week. Or it's something where, yeah, you could be out for 2 months and you're not going to the Olympics. Yikes. Now, personally, to me, I don't think Connor Bedard makes the Olympics. I don't think he's as versatile as some of the players that they're trying to, sift through. But there is that debate to be made that he could be in that top 6 and just be that power play specialist, that scorer, put him on the line with McDavid and Reinhart and see what happens and just kind of shelter him and put him in good positions to succeed. Sure. But even then, I'd still want somebody who's going to be able to get back, who's going to be able to be a little bit more gritty. I think he does have that fight in him. Don't get me wrong. I've seen him perform on a pretty big stage a couple of times. Absolutely crazy. But again, it's the versatility that I worry about. And I love what he's been able to do this year. It's unfortunate how he's been out, but when we're just talking about Olympics specifically, I don't think he makes it. But even then, he's still in consideration. This sucks for an injury. It sucks for Chicago. It sucks for him because genuinely, what was he on pace? He was on pace for a decent amount, at least this year. And I want to say he was going to get to 100 points, probably more. And now this might take him out for a bit now. And it was going to be his breakout year. So again, I'm not going to stay on this too long, but really unfortunate situation when it comes to Connor Bedard, the Blackhawks, possibly Team Canada if he's going to be picked on there. And I'm just hoping that it's nothing too long term. So I guess we'll have to see just kind of how this one flows out. Moving on, and it's Kevyn Adams and the Buffalo Sabres. Yes, finally, Sabres fans, all your groaning has been heard. And okay, personally, look, I don't think this is as much as Kevyn Adams' fault as it also is Pegula's fault. Yes, the Pegulas have not been running the Buffalo Sabres that well. And when it comes to Kevyn Adams, has he done a good job running the Sabres? Well, he got in charge in 2020 and he's been bad for the most part. Yeah, he's been pretty terrible. And look, he starts right here when they're just at pretty much their lowest point. Drafted pretty decently. Like this is the season after he took over. He took over in 2020, so we're looking at 2020, 2021. Yeah, not good. It's just not good for the Buffalo Sabres. And I did this on purpose to show you of where he kind of took over after that one season. There's a pretty big difference. Now, keep in mind, this is where you're losing guys like Jack Eichel, Linus Ullmark, okay, Reinhart. Okay. And they've had some pretty decent time to rebuild there, bring in some pieces and make things happen. Of course, before he took over, Rasmus Dahlin was already here. You talk about Tage Thompson really breaking out during this time, Alex Tuck becoming a big focal point of this team, Owen Power getting on this team and really developing, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who really hasn't been able to do that yet. Devin Levi, his development has been pretty meh when it comes to his time in the AHL. And I've been able to watch him a lot this year. He's been very on and off. There's just so much bad for this Buffalo Sabres team. And now going back to this article done by The Athletic, what we're hearing, look, it sounds like there's just internal discussions about replacing the general manager. And I don't think that's the worst idea in the world. Now, the Buffalo Sabres have been pretty committed to keeping Kevyn Adams on their staff and him around. Why? I don't know. Maybe he has a plan that he's still a couple of years not done yet and they still believe in it. Maybe he has some blackmail on him. I don't know. Or maybe Pagula just cares about money. And the Sabres are kind of just one thing where it's like, yeah, it's cool to own them, but I don't really care to do much with them. Why? I don't know why you wouldn't really want to have more success around you. Maybe the Buffalo Bills just mean more to them. I get it. They make a little bit more money. A lot more money, but this is just sad. It's the Buffalo Sabres are truly a laughingstock franchise. And, I don't like to use that word lightly, but you've seen how things have been done throughout this whole time, ownership wise, GM wise, and just success. And when this team hasn't made the playoffs in, over a decade, it gets to a point where you say, maybe there needs to be change. Right? Just a little bit. Maybe there needs to be a little bit of change. And now, look, Adams' contract runs through the 2026-27 season. So it's not too long where this guy could just walk away and not have to pay for any of this. Yeah, I mean, look, would it really change everything for the Buffalo Sabres? Yeah, maybe, right? Maybe if you really get someone who's committed to really trying to turn the ship around. Yeah, I think that starts with a couple of things for the Buffalo Sabres, but it's a little bit more than that. It's a culture thing, right? Players know when your owner wants to win. They realize that. They bring in the right people. They make the right moves. They show commitment. What commitment has been showed to the Sabres, to their fans? Like, truly, you sign your big guys, but then they just want to leave. Like, JJ Peterka, couldn't get him done. You got Thompson done, but if you don't start to win this season, like there's been rumors about him and Deline and others leaving. Tuck's on the last year of his contract. He hasn't re-signed yet. What do you do? So it's one thing to say that you're committed to the team and that you want to make a difference. It's another thing to not show anything about that commitment. And I think that's kind of where fans are at. I think that's kind of where the team's at. And I think that's kind of what they see, right? It's a joke of a franchise. It's a joke of a team right now. And I feel bad because the fans there really do care. And it's not like the situation where it's, yeah, like the team's good, but no one's showing up. No, that's not what's happening. It's actually the opposite. The fans are there, they care, but the team is, it's not mid. It's just bad. So I feel bad for them. I really do. It's not fun to watch for them, at least. And, I hope things can get better, but that's just the one thing to keep in mind is you just don't know in the world of hockey about what's going to happen. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. Kevyn Adams is on the hot seat, and who's surprised? Not me. I don't think he's a good GM, but it's definitely a lot deeper than just the GM being fired. I think there's a lot of things that need to change. So we'll see how that goes. And the final one that we'll get into is the Winnipeg Jets. Kind of, just hold on a second. It's actually the return of one guy. Now, the Winnipeg Jets, they've been on a little bit of a losing streak, bad streak, win there and 3 losses there. It's just not great. But they get this win against the Washington Capitals, a pretty good team, 5-1, dominant. They looked good. They played well in those beautiful alternate jerseys. But the one returnee that made the biggest difference here, and I think we're all seeing it in the title, is Connor Hellebuyck. He made his debut back into the season after having that surgery, makes 24-25 saves, .960, and just looks good. Now, I was having a conversation with a Jets fan. He talks to me a lot, and he was saying, well, he wasn't even the best player that played. And you know what? That is true. I don't think he was the best player, but he was definitely up there and he made a difference, even if it wasn't as big as they thought. And what I mean by that is Connor Hellebuyck really did change how the Jets played. Now we'll see it from the scoring chances here. The Jets were just all over Washington. Look at how close everything was to the net. They were just doing absolute havoc there. They looked good, right? I don't think we're saying that that's not a thing. But look at the Capital scoring chances. Things very much the outside for the most part. No high danger chances, nothing. Now, what does that say to you? Well, some might say that Connor Hellebuyck made the saves that he needed to, and he did his job. He brought that calming presence. And I think that's something to be said about, right? When you have a guy that you can trust behind you, you tend to maybe make less mistakes. And when you do make those mistakes, they might not be big, and you know that you can rely on him. And usually you can with a multi-time Vezina winner. But I think that also says that they just played well in front of him. They kept things to the outside. They didn't allow those high danger chances that had been plaguing them in the games before. Now, does that have something to do with wanting to make a difference? Or does that have something to do with Connor Hellebuyck playing there and being around? I think it has something to do with both of those sides. Because when we look at the game before against the Boston Bruins, again, still some chances in front, still Winnipeg causing some havoc. This was a 6-3 game. Both sides had their chances. Winnipeg, apparently, according to the deserve to win meter, 67%. But for the Boston Bruins, you can see that those chances a lot more closer to the net. Winnipeg was being a lot more lazy with that stuff. Now, again, this is a one-off, but when you look at the other games, it starts to fall a little bit more of a trend. And what that says to me is that, yes, Winnipeg relies on Connor Hellebuyck, but maybe he relies on their play as well. Maybe that comfortability that you get with a guy in that back of the net helps the Jets just play better, helps them be more calm and focus on the offensive side of the puck rather than just really trying to fend so much because you're trying to make up for what Hellebuyck brings versus what you look at Eric Comrie might not be able to, or a Thomas Milic of your AHL affiliate Manitoba Moose. So one thing to keep looking at there as the season goes on is, Connor Hellebuyck makes a big difference for this Winnipeg Jets team. And you can say what you want about the playoffs and what he does, but it's true, right? And it's an interesting query, if you get what I mean there. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's one thing I'll leave you with. But that does it here for Dump and Chase. If you have not already, make sure you like, subscribe, go and share that video. Comment. I want to hear what all of you think about the trades, about these topics, about maybe if I was explaining it right, if you liked what I said, if you didn't like what I said, let me know, because I'd really like to, again, connect, grow this community, and see what all of you think. It's always very interesting. But until next time for Dump and Chase, which will be next Monday, we'll be talking Friday with another topic. My name is Zach Staden, and we'll be talking soon.